is a recording for GCC. I'm Ursa, and today we'll be doing something a less of a special. So I want to start this video by saying thank you, Philly, because we recently hit 151 subscribers here. That is 151 people subscribed to this channel. That is a lot more than I thought it would be, and there's nothing happier to me than to make videos that people enjoy. And so far, I think people have enjoyed the things I make, so yes, thank you. You're not just a number on the subscriber count. You are someone that is beautiful, that's wonderful, and this would not have been possible without you, without every single one of you. So pat yourself on the back. This channel is an effort of you and I. So for this video, I want to do something a little bit different. So I'll be drawing my life, even though my skills at drawing are utterly and absolutely atrocious. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. And so let's start, shall we? So I was born and raised in this small town called Glennsdale. And if you're talking about this town, it is basically the same as any suburban town in America. If you can imagine that kind of town, you've pretty much imagined Glennsdale, The town itself isn't really in the middle of nowhere, but I wouldn't say it is close to any city. At least we're not an Amish community, so we still have internet, however slow that is. So I was born in a peculiar way, so this is a story that my mother loves to tell to basically everyone asking about my past. I think it's because it was quite traumatic for her as well. So I was born strangled by my own umbilical cord. So let me say that again in case that didn't land for you. First hour of me being alive, I was born already looking for a way to go back to heaven. That is how bad things were. Thankfully, I received my first luck of the world, and that is that I survived all that ordeal. And I was born as a small baby. Apparently I was really small that people just thought I was born prematurely. No, I was born normally. I was just really small for some reason. When I was a toddler, I really loved to draw. And that came with an issue because I would be drawing at the wall, at the window, and at the door. Basically anywhere a marker could draw, I would be there scribbling. And that's probably why I got yelled at a lot by my mother, because, I don't know, she probably didn't like me drawing X, Y, and Z at the wall, with a marker. And I believe those were permanent marker as well, but I don't really remember. To this day, some of those drawings are still at my old house. But yes, those were really, really childish, but then again, I was a toddler, so, what can you do? Something I used to do as a toddler, according to my mother, is that I just could not sit still. I would just be running somewhere, I would be doing something, and that is good, I was an active child, except that I would be running to the woods, which is not really a 5-year-old's place. So as a result, my dad, or my mother really, would put me in the house, because otherwise I'll be running to the woods and get eaten by a bear or something. There were a lot of things that my mother and my dad used to do just to keep me still. So my mother would just read random passages from really any book, and I would just be there listening to her. Apparently that's something I did even though I was a child who loved running to the woods. And my dad would buy a stack of paper whenever he came back from work, and I would just be drawing on those papers like tomorrow, and I would just be burning through them in a week or something. So I think it worked, but there was something else that was much, much better than these two. And that was my dad's work laptop. So this thing was magical to me at the time, because I could be moving the cursor around and things would change. And he would let me use it for like a few minutes because he needed it for work. And I would use it mainly for two things really. And those things were games. Who would have thought, really? So there were two games that my dad had installed. I think there were only two. He might have more, So the first game is just Insaniquarium, which, it was really fun. And this was the game I played the most of. in that laptop. So Doom was just something that my dad would play, and I would just be coming over, and then he would just say, "Hey, do you want to play this?" For some reason, my dad asked me to play the first Doom, the first Doom game. So I did. And I was kind of bad at this, I think. My memory was terrible at this time, but I remember not being able to just move a single inch, even though my dad showed me how to do it. I would actually have friends, I would have people that come over to my place and they would be asking, "Hey, can we play that fish game that we played yesterday?" Because of this, my dad would install a lot more games to his laptop, and later on when we got a family PC, I would just be playing on that too, he would install games there as well. So these games I would play every single waking hour of my life, I'll be playing non-stop for 24 hours every day. Maybe not really 24 hours, but it felt like that to me at the time. And, it did help me get some friends, which I'm still connected to this day. But there were a lot of my time spent just playing games, I think I enjoyed school back there, because my friends were there and we would just be talking about random things, and we were talking about the games that we played today. It was a lot of fun, really, but then again, I was really young, so a lot of things were fun for me. And in school, things I would do the most are counting and drawing, which came to no surprise to me today, because, the things I did when I was younger really reflected on this. So, right, I enjoyed school back then, like I had friends here, I had friends at home. Yeah, I think overall I pretty much enjoyed school. And I was really talkative at the time, so I'll be talking about the things I did at school or like at home. And, anywhere that anyone would listen to me, I would be talking to them, anything at all, really. However, I had to grow up just like everyone else. And because of this, I had to face my first problem in life, which is puberty. And because at the time I already joined secondary school, things were a little bit different, like in there people would just make groups, friend groups, and they would just exclude me for some reason, and that didn't really sit well to me to this day. What I know is that I was excluded and I started excluding myself as well. But because of it, I started building this wall that makes it really hard for me to talk to anyone. And this problem grew to the point where I just had no close friends, really. Like, I had friends, but I didn't have close friends. This meant that I was growing from a social butterfly to someone that is really hard to talk to, I would be really quiet, I would be excluding myself from conversations. It was really miserable at the time. And now you might say, well, you sound normal now, And that is not without reason. And that reason started when I joined high school. In there, I met an upperclassman, let's just call him Jim. And so Jim, kind person that he was, invited me to his club. Now, back then, I didn't really think much about clubs, really, because I found them to be quite a waste of time, I would just rather go home and not do anything. But he strongly invited me, to the point where saying that you kind of needed clubs, in high school. And that club was the GCC, which is the Game and Culture Club, surprisingly. Now, even though it was called the GCC, we didn't really talk about games. That was the job of the Computer Connection Club, the CCC. And we didn't really talk about culture. That was the job for other culture clubs. We just did nothing in that club. But because of it, I got a space for me to talk to. I was having fun here, I was talking to Jim and other members here as well. There were 3 other people that were part of this club. So you have Jim right here, and then someone I would call Ruby, and then the last one I would call Jack. And these people were really kind to me, and as a result, not long after really, I became a part of the club. Now, I did mention that they were my upperclassmen, and that is for a reason. That is because they were in third year, and that meant they would be graduating. Literally, a year later. So I was just there, in a club that's about to die, with friends that I would later meet, but not in school. So, that's not good. And then the day I dreaded came by, which is the graduation days of my upperclassmen. And that was, I don't know, that day was quite bittersweet to me, and I felt a lot of things in that day. But mainly the fact that, losing a friend, not really, they're still here, they're still alive, but they're not in school anymore, and I spent a lot of my time in school, and I was hit with this realization that I would just be doing things alone in a club, and the club would be dead because I don't really have enough members. So the rules that a club must have 4 members to stay alive, and the GCC was one of those clubs that nearly got shut down if it was not for me that joined in at the last moment. So thankfully it was alive for a bit, and then my upperclassmen graduated, and so it's back to the state it was before. And then my club advisor said to me that I need to just do something for the club, just to prove that this club is still alive, and that we're still recruiting members, we just haven't found any. And so she suggested that I do something related to the name, the GCC. And failing that, I have to recruit people here. Except that I had no friends back then, at least not friends that were not already part of a club, because you can't have 2 clubs, you kinda have to have just one. So I was lost, I was depressed, I was just kind of sad that this place had to go for me. Because of this, I would just spend my time in the club room just watching physios and doing nothing, because there were really nothing to do in the club room really. I tried to recruit people, it didn't really go well because people already have their clubs, and people who don't have clubs are usually people who just go back home immediately after the first bell, So I was lost, and at the time I discovered a new genre of physios called Let's Plays. It was my only source of connection, not in a bad way, but in a way that mattered. I would just be watching these physios where people play games, and I'll be having fun, not because they were my friends necessarily, but because it felt like playing games with a friend. And so I had a brilliant idea that nobody in the entire school has ever thought of for their club. And so I told my club advisor that I would make a YouTube channel to show one during this club, to get people into this club. And thankfully, she agreed on it, and she said that it could be a part of my club activity. And so that is how this channel was born. Because of those Let's Plays and how close it felt for me to watch these people, I decided to make similar videos to them. Not really in the exact same style, but I felt that format, that feeling of closeness you get in watching people play games, I think that format just felt really special to me. So that was what I decided to do. I decided to make Let's Play videos for my club. Ever since starting the channel, I felt that a lot of things have happened, and I felt glad that this channel is the way it is now, because I get to make videos that I feel like connect with people, that make people happy, and there's nothing happier to me than doing that. But, more importantly, I'm happy that you are here, really, that you are here to watch the videos and to respond to the videos, and to be here just hanging out with me. So, you know what? Let's continue this together, and let's continue this towards a future where we can just do more fun things together. And so that does it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Time to sail, Oracle Whale.